All right, Lord Ranger, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this big story. Moving on now, in recent updates, China further accused the United States of pressure, threats and blackmail after US President Donald Trump floated additional tariffs of 50% on China. China has urged the United States to show some respect and adopt an attitude of equality, respect and mutual benefit for meaningful talks following President Trump's initiation of a trade war with broad tariffs. China also accused the U.S. of blatant disregard amidst the trade row, calling the U.S. Vice President ignorant over his peasant comment. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian has warned that if the U.S. persists in its tariff and trade war, China will continue to resist. China strongly opposes U.S. threats to escalate trade tensions, with President Trump's tariff threats pushing global markets into turmoil. Chinese manufacturers struggled with rising costs and price negotiations. Despite growing concerns, Trump defended his tariffs as necessary for U.S. economic renewal. Amidst financial volatility, global leaders, including Elon Musk, urged the U.S. to reconsider, while Trump's advisor dismissed Musk's suggestions. Markets feared lasting economic consequences from the trade war. Let's listen in to what Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian had to say.
中方对中美经贸关系的立场已经讲得很清楚了。听到这位副总统说出这样无知又缺乏礼貌的话，令人诧异，也感到悲哀。
Mika Pickus, foreign affairs expert, is joining us live from Washington. Mika Pickus, as far as, of course, this standoff between the United States and China is concerned, where do you see it headed? Do you believe there will be any concessions by either side, or do you see it escalating further in the days ahead?
It's a great question. I think it's kind of hard to tell. I think both sides are sort of locked in a game of chicken, where it's going to be a question of which one decides to sort of sidestep the on-Russian car first. We know Trump can be very stubborn about things, but the Chinese have also made their position on this quite clear. And I think the sort of sad fact of the matter is that there are a lot of other countries, India being one of them specifically, that are going to get caught up in this. There are going to be ripple effects that reverberate throughout the global economy. It's just hard to say what those are going to be specifically. It all depends on, which side backs down first, if at all.
Yes, absolutely. Also, I have to ask you then, Mika Pickus, about, the effects that all of this is happening, the effects that all of this is having on other world markets. How do you believe, this escalation between the United States and China, in trade? They are the world's two largest economies at the end of the day. What kind of impact is this going to have on the rest of the world?
I think it's going to have an outsized impact. I think a lot of countries, regardless of where they sort of stand in the global order, are trade partners with both US or China, maybe one more than the other. But I look at places like Japan, I look at countries like Kazakhstan and Central Asia. I look at, you've got Pacific Island nations. I mean, everybody is going to feel this in some way, shape, or form. I'm actually quite interested in seeing what the situation will be for India, because as I see it, there is sort of an ongoing debate as to whether the US, China, or a rising India is going to become the world's biggest market for trade and investment. And I think Trump is grossly underestimating the value and potential for specifically Asian and Southeast Asian markets for investment and growth. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think the likes of like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, many of these countries have been hit by very, very high reciprocal tariffs relative to what they were taking in, certainly on a country-specific level, I mean. So it's hard to say, but I think there will be some degree of volatility, and it's only really going to settle down once the dust begins to settle. But once again, unclear how long that's going to take.
Mr. Pickus, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on that story. Let's move on to more news coming in this hour. Countries are expressing concern about the economic and political fallout after US President Donald Trump imposed sweeping tariffs that shocked global markets last week. European Central Bank policymaker Yanis Stournaras has said that higher inflation and a global trade war following Trump's imposition of tariffs could delay normalization of the Eurozone monetary policy. Here's what he had to say.
Τυχόν νέα αναζωοποίηση του πληθωρισμού ή των πληθωριστικών προσδοκιών ενδέχεται να επιβραδύνει και να ανακόψει τη διαδικασία ομαλοποίησης της νομισματικής πολιτικής, επιδεινώνοντας τις χρηματοπιστωτικές συνθήκες αλλά και την αναπτυξιακή δυναμική. Η επιβολή δασμών στις εισαγωγές από μια χώρα θα επηρεάσει και τις άλλες χώρες που συμμετέχουν στις παγκόσμιες αλυσίδες αξίας, ακόμα και χωρίς την επιβολή δασμών.
Meanwhile, the European Union still wants to avoid a trade war with the United States despite Donald Trump's administration's rejection of the zero-for-zero offer on all industrial goods put forward by Brussels. Well, let's in fact listen in now to what the spokesperson of the European Commission, Olaf Gill, had to say.
We're in a sticky situation here. Things aren't getting better, they're getting worse. And we're trying to actively sit down with our American friends and say, let's make the situation better.
Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has criticized the move as not actions one does to a friend, reflecting disappointment in the US stance. Let's listen in to what Wong, who's Singapore's Prime Minister, had to say.
We are very disappointed by the US move, especially considering the deep and long-standing friendship between our two countries. These are not actions one does to a friend. The likelihood of a full-blown global trade war is growing. Singapore has decided not to impose retaliatory tariffs. Doing so will only lead to increased costs for Singaporeans. But other countries may not be guided by the same considerations and may have different perceptions and views.
In Japan, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba revealed he had personally urged Trump to reconsider the tariff policies. It's vital to preserve the free and open trade order, he told reporters in Tokyo. These reactions highlight growing international frustration with the Trump administration's aggressive trade stance. Joining us now live is Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President CDEPR. He's joining us live from New Delhi. Dr. Bhattacharya, do you believe there has been uniform global condemnation of these new tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, or are there any countries who welcome it?
No, clearly I think it's evident that every single country is extremely uncomfortable, if not vocal, about the tariffs that the US administration has put in. Clearly it disrupts trade as we know it, and therefore along with trade, it disrupts our life as we know it. I think the sharp reaction from the stock markets with an absolute rout yesterday kind of demonstrates the impact of the tariffs. Even though there has been a slight recovery today, it's going to be a roller coaster for the stock market, given that there is still a significant amount of uncertainty in terms of what the US administration is planning to do, because the steps that they're taking were also quite unexpected. It was not clear that what the Trump administration had said will actually be followed through, and there will be actual trade tariffs put in, because the outcome of that was well known by all economists in the world. And hence, there is a lot of trust deficit that has grown because of the tariffs. And I doubt if there is any single country out there which is aligned to the increase in tariffs by the US government.
Dr. Bhattacharya, as far as, of course, now this issue is concerned, what do we expect in the next few days? Do you believe these negotiations will continue? Is the rigid approach of the Trump administration likely to also persist now? Or do you believe there can be some middle ground?
Insofar as I gather, based on feedback from various people across the world, there is already conversations going on between the Trump administration and the governments of major economies. So I believe that conversation is going to take things forward. We have also heard the President of the European Union saying that she is open to having a 0-0 reciprocal tariff. I think many of the large economies would be open to having a 0-0 reciprocal tariff, which essentially means that there will be no tariffs imposed by EU on American goods and vice versa. And that's the regime that others are trying to also follow. So that's the template that's evolving as we speak. So yes, there is a conversation going on. Perhaps the immediate tariffs are put in to precipitate these conversations, but only time can tell what really, which is the direction that we are really going towards.
Dr. Bhattacharya, thank you for joining us with your perspective on that story. Now, some news coming in this hour. At least 27 people have been killed after a roof collapsed at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. Many more are injured, and rescue workers are still attempting to free people from the rubble. The cause of the incident is yet to be ascertained. And that's all we have time for on this particular edition of World Report. We'll continue to bring you more news and updates on NewsX World. Stay tuned.